Kaya pag meron kang psoriasis,
UTI guys, allergic rhinitis pag kumain.
pag na-miss mo ang pagkain, Pilipino.
Good morning mga friends! Today mamasyal tayo sa Queen Mary, isang tourist attraction sa Long Beach. Okay, samahan niyo ako guys. Let's go! Super traffic guys. Ang ganda ng weather ngayon. Sunny. 68 siya ngayon. Nasa freeway. Traffic. Hello mga friends, itutour ko kayo sa Queen Mary. Habang nag-aantay kami ng time namin. So mura lang guys kung nandito kayo sa USA, kung nandito kayo somewhere in LA, in California. Ang location ng Queen Mary guys dito sa Long Beach. So madali lang punta dito. Meron ticket, is only $10 for the tour. And may mga restaurants din, pero hindi pa open ang kanilang mga restaurants. So, itutour ko kayo. Halina, samahan niyo ako guys, magtutour tayo.
Originally owned and operated by a company known as Cunard. From 1840 until the late 20th century, Cunard had a deal to deliver parcels of mail between Europe and North America. It's actually why we carry the distinction of RMS. It stands for Royal Mail Ship. But the plans for the Queen Mary and her sister ship Queen Elizabeth would begin being drawn up in 1926. These are to be two of the largest and fastest ships in the world. In fact, the work that they could do weekly would take 4 smaller ships from previous generations to do. However, construction on this vessel alone begins December of 1930 in Clydebank, Scotland at John Brown Shipyard. About a year into the construction of the ship, it was halted due to the overwhelming effects of the Great Depression. It actually caused Cunard to go into bankruptcy. At the same time, the White Star Line, and does anybody know who they're famous for? The Titanic, yes. They too were feeling the same financial effects. So 2 of the top shipping lines in the entire world are now broke, in desperate need of money. So they both approached Parliament to try to secure a loan to keep their companies going. Parliament says they have enough for just one company. But rather than lose one, they strike an agreement and they ask the 2 to form together. So they become Cunard White Star. The equivalency that I can kind of put it today, it's like as if Coke and Pepsi were to form together. So they become Cunard White Star. They will complete construction of this ship and the ship to follow, which will be her sister, the Queen Elizabeth. By 1934, after construction had resumed, they had finally set most of the outer structures in place. It's finally time to launch this ship and give her her official name. Because up until that point, she was only known as Job Number 534. So on September 26, 1934, Queen Mary is launched into the River Clyde in Scotland, the first time this ship will physically touch water. 2 more years were needed to complete the upper decks, the superstructure, and to put all her boiler rooms and everything in place. But by 1936, the ship was completed. It's now time for the maiden voyage. That will begin May 27th of 1936, completing the journey June 1st. Now the route is pretty simple. Queen Mary would go from Southampton, England, with a quick stopover in Cherbourg, France, and then steam across to New York. She could usually complete the trip in anywhere from 4.5 to 5 days. In 1938, however, she will set the overall speed record for the fastest crossing of the North Atlantic Ocean, in which she will do it in 3 days, 20 hours, and 42 minutes. A speed title Queen Mary held for 14 years. But life as a passenger liner will continue on. September of 1939, she was almost 200 voyages into her lifetime. When on September 3rd of that year, she's in the middle of the North Atlantic, 2 days away from New York, she would have word handed down that England had declared war with Germany, thus beginning the Second World War. Obviously, she can't turn around at that time, so she keeps speeding on to New York. But this will be the first time the ship will start its military tactics. So, they blacked out all 2,000 portholes and windows. All external lighting was turned off. The ship ordered all passengers to remain indoors, even to smoke, so that they did not give away position of the ship. And this will be the first time she will ever use her zigzag or serpentine pattern out over the open seas. This is to make her a much harder target. There were some very famous people on board that final crossing, including Bob Hope and his wife Dolores, James Warner, one of the Warner brothers, and of course, J.P. Morgan. The ship arrives 2 days later in New York. They unload the passengers and crew, and we start the war dormant, as they're not quite sure if they're going to use the ship or not. In March of 1940, she's called into full active war service. So, this means she needs to be transformed from cruise liner to military vessel. In order to do so, anything that wasn't bolted down or in place was removed from the ship, including furniture, artwork, silverware, even the stateroom doors. Everything was taken off. They painted the ship Battleship Navy Gray. They outfitted her with bunks, weapons, and other things necessary for war. She would mostly act as a military transport, carrying the militaries of the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. She would also work as a hospital ship, a POW transport, and then when the war ends, she was known as the Bride and Baby Shuttle, reuniting families here in North America. By 1947, July to be exact, Queen Mary is restored to her former glory and put back out over the open seas as a luxury liner. She will stay that way well into the 60s. But by then, due to the new popularity and the newest form of transatlantic travel, jet airplane travel, Queen Mary could no longer keep up with the speed and convenience of airplanes. And by 1967, this ship was officially retired from service. So Cunard is faced with an unenviable position. They either scrap the ship for parts, or they put her up for sale at auction to hopefully somebody that will keep her legacy alive. The auction opens, bids come in from all over the world. A majority of them were coming from scrapyards. Only one major city really had the best interest for the ship in mind, and that is the city of Long Beach, California. They enter a bid, which ends up being the highest, of $3,450,000. So, Long Beach wins the auction. The newest prize of Long Beach now just needs to get here. So beginning October 31st of 1967, Queen Mary will leave Southampton, England for the very last time and start making her way here to the West Coast. Now granted, they took advantage of this time. There were passengers, there were crew members. Everybody on board was excited to be a part of what they called the last great cruise. What they weren't quite ready for, however, was how long they were going to be on the open ocean. Mind you, the crew members were all seafarers. They're all mariners. They know what this is about. They know what the oceans are like. Passengers, on the other hand, it's a long time, considering that the final crossing lasted 39 days, totaling 14,500 miles. The reason for that really is because of this. At the time of the final crossing, the Queen Mary was 8 feet too wide for the Panama Canal. So she had to go all the way down around South America. Now at that time, in the southern hemisphere, you're entering into the summer months. Not only that, the ship would pass the equator twice on her journey. This is a ship that was not built for hot weather. It's a cold weather ship. It's going to retain a lot of the heat. So it got too grueling for some of these passengers, especially in the South America area. So a lot of them got off in ports in South America, got into airplanes, flew to Long Beach, and then came here and watched the ship come in. And then tried to convince everybody that they were actually on board. And I'm like, yeah, right. So, December 9th, 1967, Queen Mary, with all the fanfare, pulls into Long Beach. From that moment on, it takes about 4 years to convert the vessel. But in 1971, we opened to the public as Long Beach's newest hotel, attraction, convention center, and museum. In 1993, this ship was entered into the National Register of Historic Places with Historic Significance. And 2 things are going to be happening this year. Well, I should say 3 for that matter. Of course, the reopening of the ship. Secondly, you're going to have, in September of this year, we're going to be celebrating the ship's 89th birthday.
Wow.
And in December, we will celebrate the 56th anniversary of Queen Mary's arrival to the city of Long Beach, California. So as you can see, folks, we have now been a part of Long Beach's history 25 years longer than we were out over the open seas. Now, I understand. That's a lot of information to take in the first about 10 minutes of our tour. So I'm just a little curious, while we have a moment to pause, are there any questions? Class passenger, this is where you would have gone for various forms of entertainment. Now, the room itself has seen some slight change throughout the years. The biggest change has been the flooring. This used to be covered in all hardwood all the way throughout. The carpet dance floor kind of combination you find today was put in about the early 80s. But the hood that covered the room was oak parquet, and the last piece of that flooring was right here. This is the last piece of the original flooring of the Queen's Salon. The room itself still very much sets the theme of music. You can see that in these bronze reliefs here and here, as well as one above the stage. The bronze reliefs were done by an artist named Maurice Lambert and are entitled Symphony. His artwork is probably more modern examples of Art Deco. Behind me here